Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Sling of Ages podcast here on YouTube. This is again another archive episode. This is from 2019, January 2019, my second interview with the great Steve Hackett. Of course, Steve Hackett was a member of Genesis and has a wonderful solo career. Here he talks about his album At the Edge of Light. I also interviewed him in 2017 or 18. I'm trying to find that interview on my phone. That was a little bit more contentious for a number of reasons, which you may hear if I find that interview. Again, this is audio only. I found this recently on an old iPhone, so it wasn't intended to be released, but I thought it'd be interesting if you hear it. So here it is, Mr. Steve Hackett talking about At the Edge of Light. And we'll be back with you soon. Thank you.
To you and God, it's been a while. About a year ago, last March 2017.
Yeah, it might have been the last album. That might have been the Night Siren album.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. So I guess that's right. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Are you in England or are you in
Yeah, no, this is England. Yeah, this is very close to London, which is on the outskirts here.
Oh, fantastic. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a few questions about the Edge of Light and your upcoming European tour. And I guess for me, I love the Night Siren. That was my favorite Steve Hackett album. How does the Edge of Light differ from the Night Siren? Because I think your press material mentions in some ways it's a continuation.
Well, I think it's with the idea of working with a band that is worldwide. It's a kind of fellowship. Having made friends with people with extraordinary talents right across the globe. I have a band I work with in England, but then at the same time we augment it with many other people from far-flung places, such as Azerbaijan, with the addition of somebody from India who plays guitar on the album this time. So people from the USA, from the UK, Sweden, many countries are involved with it. So in a way, it's a companion piece to the Night Siren.
Well,
in that it's the same idea of a politician driving people apart, but musicians are insisting on getting together and working with each other. We know no borders. Why should we? Nationalism always failed countries economically and politically in the past. Driving people apart with highlighting their differences is not the way to go.
Sure.
And nowhere more so than what's happening to you guys at the moment. One watches with horror what's going on in the news. Government shutdowns and our government here in England just in absolute chaos, and things just really deteriorating. People either side of the divide. But I keep saying to people that we've got technology which enables people to work together. It's not physically in the same place, I mean, to be working towards a common goal. And I welcome the interdependency of that. But it seems politicians are determined to drive us back to the Middle Ages. But what we do as musicians is we elect to be ambassadors for constructive thinking, for peace, and all of that. And travel. You don't get threatened if we work with a guy who speaks a different language.
And Steve, that was very much, and that was very much like the Night Siren. In terms of the writing of the lyrics, I think the Night Siren, you also worked with your wife Jo Hackett and Roger King. How do the lyrics differ for this album versus the Night Siren?
Well, it's pretty much the same process. Lyrics come out of travels, out of conversations. We just, for instance, returned from a me to Ethiopia, where we met many people at different tribes, and the world just feels like a much smaller place. And although you communicate many times via interpreters, somehow the message is always the same, that we're not that different from each other, and what can we do for you, what can you do for us? That's it. So we showed up with pens and eye drops, and it's the small things. My wife bought a little girl her first pair of shoes that happened to be at this street market. Just out of the blue, and you can make such a difference. It's the small gestures, I think, that work. Ethiopia is no longer in famine. It's not the same world that was so admirably served by Live Aid with Bob Geldof and Midge and Harvey Goldsmith, and so many acts on both sides of the Atlantic. But still, it's a country that's dirt poor, but still rich in varied culture, and it was extraordinary.
But in terms,
and seeing extraordinary things, it's like going back 3,000 years. And then, it's like an episode out of Back to the Future, and suddenly, you're seeing something that's, well, perhaps a little more like from Star Wars, where you're seeing people living in like bizarre constructions, and yet somehow there's a point of communication, and sometimes that's in a look, a gesture, or just a thank you. It's an extraordinary thing. So we're trying to figure out how we can do something. Obviously, we can't do the massive gesture that was, the one that brought the world together before. But we might be able to do something.
well, Steve,
And we're figuring that out.
I understand the project took about 18 months to record. Do any of this
Yeah.
do any of the songs date back to the Night Sermon?
Not we're going to do it all the way after the night side. Album. There were ideas that I had that I went back to. The seeds of these songs are sown earlier visits, earlier tours. For instance, the song Underground Railroad. I think it was Wilmington. I was alongside the river. Celebrated local people. Harriet Tubman, who was involved with the Underground Railroad, slavers escape. And it was a network which enabled people to escape. And then on the bookshelves on one of the airports I was hurtling through, I saw Underground Railroad. Interesting, I thought, and picked it up. But written by Colson Whitehead and recommended by Barack Obama, amongst others. And I thought, oh, okay. And the idea of that was to make the Underground Railroad, the network, into an actual train which ran underground. And although that's fiction, the story and the motivation and the characters that were involved with it rang true. And so I worked with. First and foremost, with Lorelei and Durga McBroom, the two sisters who worked with
Pink Floyd, right?
Pink Floyd, and both have marvelous voices. And I said it would be nice if we had a gospel feel for the first part. So by all means, here are the melody lines, but we have that. But variations are welcome. Loosely follow the chords, but the idea of improvisation and anything that feels heartfelt, it's welcomed in this. So I wanted variation, and I wanted the cut loose at times, which they did. I only wish I had longer to work with them, but I had a day with them, and they were extraordinary. They were very quick on the uptake. They liked liked the story, and I gave them a copy of the book. Lorelei lives in New York, Gerda lives in Rome, and I'll be seeing them soon on Cruise to the Edge and on the Blue. 2 cruises that are coming up, so that's where I think we originally connected, and it would be great to see them and have them get on the show on Something of Mine.
Oh, absolutely. And since you're talking about some of the band that you used to record the album,
Yeah.
and this album you used a number of different drummers. Gary O'Toole, who you used a lot before, of course, Simon Phillips, Nick D, Virgilia. Why the change?
Well, I think on the last album we may have had 16 drummers, and I think on this one we've got about 4 or 5. And there's also Roger Kim, who does virtual drumming. And we mix and match a lot of things, but I think we got some extraordinary performances out of the people who were on the album, and it's just working with friends. I don't feel the need to work with a band that's fixed. So I've got a core band, but then I like to augment with these other characters and other friends and see what they bring to it. I mean, I realize I could probably play something that sounds roughly like sitar myself, but to work with a real virtuoso such as Shima on this one, and see what she would bring to it, was a whole different ballgame, a whole different process, and have her take on what the song was actually quite underdeveloped when we had it. We had an idea of a rhythm and a main theme, and I hadn't done the stuff at the front, and I hadn't developed it, so we didn't quite know what shape the song was going to be. And but luckily she seemed to want it immediately, and she said, "You can hear it when it's done, when you've taken it a little bit further." And I thought, it is always a risk to play something somebody's voice out there, you know. It's not company policy to do that in case they say, "Well, I'm pulling my contribution." But she said she really liked it, and she said you followed raga form on this, perhaps unconsciously. And I said, well, I don't really know what raga form is, but I'm just responding to the idea instinctively, and that's why we end up with the sort of interplay of sitar and guitars overhanging in the background, ready to take over. And at the end of the day, I just have 30 minutes to just finish up with a few guitar, and I did 3 different ones, and we just played them all back together. You know, some slow stuff and echo stuff, and then some fast stuff, the fast runs, and then also some backward stuff. So and I said to Roger, well, it might be nice if these all happen at once, so that we get the idea of when you visit India, which we did, well, actually, I think it was 2 years ago now. Yeah, we were in Mumbai, and that thing about the traffic. Once as soon as you're on the road and you're in the streets, it's incredibly populated and really big. Yeah, you know, you're an ant in the anthill, and it's extraordinary what's going on. So, what did the music to reflect the bustling nature of that? And right at the beginning, I think you were talking about Joe's contribution.
Yes.
She wrote the lyrics for the opening bit, and some of the opening melody lines. And she visited India before I had, a place called Varanasi, where she watched the sun coming up over the Ganges, and she said how absolutely beautiful that was, people bathing in the river, but at the same time, you see their bodies floating.
Steve, which song are we still talking about? Underground Railroad?
Oh, sorry, I've done a jump cut. I've moved on to the Indian song, Shadow and Flame.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
sorry about that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so, combination of reflecting her experience and my experience of our combined experience of India and Indian friends.
If I could ask you about the epic on the album as well, the those golden wings.
Yeah. That one, I wanted to write it was something I wrote really for Joe. I wanted to write a love song where I sang solo vocal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because Joe is a complex character, I think she always was a writer, even when she was a tiny child. And she'd always been very observant and had always been aware of the world situation. And she's a very generous person. You know, she saved up all her sixpences and gave it to when she saw that it's loving children in Africa, and she's still the same person. And so those golden wings, I tried to talk about some of her history in the first verse, and then the second verse sort of reflected some of my feelings, and then as it progressed, the idea of talking a little bit about our history. A lot of it's terribly symbolic and what have you, but I wanted to do a love song that was worthy of her. So turned it into an epic.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the length of some of those the longer Genesis tunes. It wasn't unusual when I joined Genesis to all write an 11 or 11 and a half minute tune together, not to mention some of the length of Supper's Ready, where it was a number of separate tunes which were all put together much more sweet. Well, I suppose we probably the same philosophy with this, but I thought 11 minutes that's enough these days. So it's something that I think came out really well. I took my time with it, allowed things to emerge slowly, particularly with the arrival of the chorus. Instead of hustling into the chorus, I let it build with different voices and orchestra. And indeed it starts. It starts with orchestra, the tune. So, in a way, it's just the theme with orchestra. What I wanted to do I know that Jay likes 19th century classical music very much, like the Romantics, and so I was trying to come up with something that might be worthy of Tchaikovsky for her at the beginning, with the sort of rising sequence and consecutive so that kind of stuff played on guitar. If it was, I think, if I had a symphony orchestra's worth of stuff instead of people tracked up, we would have, might have used harp for that, but I used guitar for that, and it has pretty much the same function on that. And then that gives way to 12 string, which I recorded in octaves. There's the 24 strings there. You just have to be very accurate if you're pressing a 12 string with another part that's doubling it in octaves. But it gives it a very rich kind of sound.
Very orchestral.
Right. Very orchestral. The whole thing develops in orchestral way, and then becomes choral as well, and not just one kind of choir. You have something that sounds Hollywood choirish, and a children's choir, and I conjured these in the various means. I did the children's choir myself, sang that myself. What else? Oh, choir singing in Latin. All that kind of stuff. But at times it's got very little to do with rock and roll, but it becomes handing it over like a tag team to another kind of energy, another kind of setup, another kind of different personnel, so that when you come back to rock or you come back to the main theme, you get that, and having been through a lot of variation. But the idea is to have lots of surprises on the way, so that instrumentalists get a chance to do couplings, and it's hardly a 3-minute pop song.
You mentioned that it was written for Joe. Did you write the lyrics with Roger on this, or did you write them by yourself?
No, I wrote them by myself, and then Joe suggested stuff for the third verse. Excuse me, and wanted to change one of the lines in the second verse. Apart from that, it's all me. Yeah, it was for her.
Well, if you could, when we spoke a year and a half ago about the nice song, we talked about your equipment. Any changes in your guitars or your effects?
Yeah, I think we've got. I'm still using. I was using Gary Moore's guitar. I didn't know Gary Moore, but I was using one that I acquired after he passed on, because we shared the same guitar tech. So I was using that largely for the album, but on that particular track I was using my old Les Paul. I also got hold of a Rickenbacker 12-string.
Oh, okay.
And I used that on one of the tracks on let me see, Under the Eye of the Sun. To introduce that, I used the 12-string, the Rickenbacker.
I think you mentioned one that you got from Mike Rutherford before, 12-string.
No, it's not something from Mike. There was a Zermatis that he had many years ago that I borrowed, and I liked it so much I asked Tony Zermatis, who is no longer of this earth, to build me one. And
yes. Okay.
Tony Zermatis was incredibly low key. He worked in a shed in the back of his garden, but he had a book full of guitars that he'd made for people such as Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Greg Lake, no slouch. But he said that what I do is I make one guitar every 3 months, and this will keep me busy for 3 months. That's how he did it. It seemed to be almost a hobby, and yet the whole world, was clamoring for these wonderful acoustic guitars that he was making. And I saw these things hugely adorned, and they looked absolutely beautiful. They looked like absolute gems, And he said, how do you want me to decorate it? And I said, what will make it sound best? And he said, actually, plain. So I said, make it as plain as you like, but I'm interested in the sound of it. And indeed, it sounds wonderful. I've gone back to playing it with a plectrum rather than fingers, because I've realised that although you can play more complicated things with fingers, it changes the nature of the tone and makes the notes sound stronger. Not in all cases. Sometimes I play with the fingers, with the nails. Sometimes nothing else will do. But other times, it's really quite. It's beautiful. So although I find it more difficult playing with a pick, because I tend to be naturally a fingerstyle player these days. Sometimes it's worth it for the extra projection and the crispness of sound, and it also sounds a little bit more like a harpsichord in a way. And but since my Genesis days, I think I've always been interested in the idea of confusing people as to what is keyboard, what is guitar, particularly with 12 strings.
Yes. And I remember with the GTR album you did a long time ago, I guess, you used a guitar synthesizer along with your Gibsons as well.
Yeah, I did. I haven't been working with synths for quite a while, but nonetheless, it can be very, very interesting working with the guitar. The one that I favoured in the end was the Roland 300, although I haven't used that for quite a few albums, it really does sound quite convincingly brass-like.
Mhm.
And of course you can then make a little slide, and that it can be a really warm sound. It's really quite versatile. But then of course guitars in themselves are extremely versatile instruments, and I think the guitars as the forerunner to the synthesizer, and before we were working with with Bob Moog's products. In a way, the guitar was the nearest thing to the human voice, or something close to the violin, or brass, with the use of fuzz boxes. And in those early days, when I first heard the Rolling Stones doing Satisfaction, I thought, oh, they've got in trumpets. I thought, at the age of whatever I was at that time, 14 or 15, and I thought, why do they do that? And then, the untrained ear at that time, all big adventure. But I realized, for someone who doesn't, surround themselves with music 24 hours a day, and lots of my pals do, they probably have no idea what they're listening to, and that doesn't really matter, does it? It's the end product that counts. So
Sure.
if you can't tell the difference between a guitar and the human voice, that's fine. That's all right.
Right. If I could ask you about your upcoming tour,
Yeah.
you changed your band a little bit in terms of your drummers. Your
Yeah.
drummer.
When I'm doing the tour with doing the two boat things, we're going to work with Marco Miniman for those 4 shows, and then it'll be Craig Blundell for the tour in the rest of the world. And there will be an American tour, and there will be a Canadian one. It's just that it's still being put together, so there will be more dates. Probably going to be 150 dates or so next year,
Wow, that's a lot
or
of
rather
dates.
this year, because we're in the new year. And I'm looking forward to it tremendously.
Yeah.
We'll be doing the whole of Selling Them by the Pound, and much of Spectral Mornings, whatever I can incredibly do from that, and stuff from At the Edge of Light. So 2 favourites, and an Unknown Quantity, which is the new one.
Hey, you've been extremely busy with your own work. Then you did the Yes tribute album with Billy Sherwood and Dave Kirshner, and a whole bunch of projects. And of course, the tours have been fantastic. Steve, is there anything else you want to cover in the next 2 minutes or so?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it is a very exciting time. My feet, I'm hardly touching the ground at the moment. It is a very busy time. I start rehearsals next week.
Wow.
So that's best for me. I'm not very good at sitting at home twiddling my thumbs. I'm not good at lying on a beach. I'm too twitchy. Mr. Twitchy Finger, itching to get out there and do it again.
Well, you've done a series of great albums and great tours, and then given us DVDs and live recordings as well after the tour. So thank you for that, and I really appreciate your time again. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Okay. Let's move on.